Cheryl, did I hear you say that somebody else crashed when I was in the other room starting the recording?
Yep. Delano went over. Yep. So pretty bad, actually. Semi either clipped their corner or just the swoosh of, it was really treacherous that last 40 minutes. It's almost like a picture, like it's almost like a duplicate of what happened in Duluth. Yeah, so between Rockford and then Annandale the year before, and then Delano this year. But trailer was toast completely like a sardine can. And then the tow truck did take it all the way to the venue. So that was really good. And then I was inspecting, and I was really surprised to see that they were in the inspection line, and they were one of the first 5 teams through inspection. And so I was like, wow. And the kids were like, well, we secured the robot really good. I was like, yeah, you did. I mean, the trailer was toast. The wheels are gone. Everything was literally looked like a can opener up in the front of it. The robot was in mid condition. So,
wow.
Yep. But there's still some of them out there trying to figure out how to get out because the coach or not the coach, but somebody else was driving a truck. So it was their personal vehicle that's totaled. Much similar. I mean, much like Rockford. So, yeah, pretty scary out there.
Wow, that's terrible. Yeah, we're reevaluating because we had 2 students driving with us on the way up, and we were very close to crashing. And so we're like, well, I guess we probably shouldn't have kids go with the trailer anymore. That's a little too dangerous.
Yeah, it's hard because that trailer, I mean, obviously it's nice to get the trailer up there with a mentor. I can tow the trailer with the bus. It's not my preferred way. So, I mean, it's a catch-22 because everybody was safe in that accident too. The truck, all is totaled, but people were fine. But you throw something like that on a bus, now you have 40 people and you're towing a trailer. So it's kind of a catch-22, send it with 2 or send it with 42. So
yeah. With the trailer whipping in the wind with some ice, it just pushes the back end of the truck out and off to the, races people go.
A lot of people stayed. They closed the road, so a lot of people had to stay anyway. So 3 teams left GNR early, left their robots with other teams to drive. And then that was it. So out of the 50, there were 52 teams, I think, something like that. 3 of them were gone. And out of those 3, I think 2 of them left their robot. Mm-hmm. There was only 1 alliance that had 2 because there was no robot there. But I was surprised only 3 teams left. So.
I'm curious how that works with getting approval from the event coordinator for a whole different team to drive your robot.
Yeah, they actually acknowledged during the awards section the teams that were participating. So the 6045 took care of St. Cloud. What is their team number, their team name? I can't even remember now. Storm. So Storm Robotics was one that their school told them they had to leave early. And so they left their robot with 6045 and worked on getting approval for that. The interesting part is some people are trying to figure out if, how would that work with alliance selection. So I'm sure there was some red tape or something with that. It did not come up with any of the robots that were on the backup plan. But, you don't have any time with the programming. You don't have any time driving the robot or getting to know the robot. So a new driver who's never driven it before is not going to have the same success as your own team did. So
they were just filling in holes to try to even up, keep all the matches even.
Actually, to be honest with you, Storm was hoping to do better with the drivers for 6045.
They were automatically, I do believe that they were automatically taken off the list for any alliance picks at that point.
So
I wonder how that's going to work for state, if they're going to get to use their second regional since they had to bow out early for state getting selected for state tournament.
So I don't think they were technically considered bowed out. I technically think they're considered completing the competition.
Well, Totino Gray's Pizza Pies, what's their number? Anyway, they took their robot home.
Yeah, they weren't there. Yeah.
So I don't know how that's going to work out for them since they only had, 3 matches, something like that, 4 matches.
Yep. Yeah, they had 7028, 38, and 48.
Well, it's an open format here, talking about week 2. I mean, very, very exciting finals, crazy finals. For those of you who are there, tell us about it.
I think it surprised pretty much everybody, especially Gators.
Well, I can tell you, we were sitting with the judges and a lot of the organizers, and we were all shocked. I'm not sure who was more surprised, everybody there or Becker and Sartell. Because that was definitely an upset.
Yeah, it sounded like a couple robot failures for Sartell.
It was horrible. We thought they were fixed. It was horrible watching them when they went back out there and they broke again. So that's unfortunate. And they were the alliance captains. I don't know. Maybe I thought I knew everything. Can your alliance captain? Because I asked Lori Shimizu and she did not know. In the backup robots that are available, can the alliance captain utilize a backup robot for themselves? Okay.
Yeah, that should be a problem. Plus, the rules this year, if you use a backup, you can come back in, right? Where that didn't used to be that way.
Yeah, but the robot, their most damaged, really, like they weren't working on their second, but the last one was a make it or break it. So that last one would have been whoever won. So if Alliance won, then they would have taken the whole thing. So if Sartell bowed out and let another bot come in, but then it's a catch-22 because is a runner-up going to be able to get those blocks and cones, as fast as you? I mean, the driving was amazing for those teams.
And I don't think they had much of a chance anyway because their third alliance robot also was disabled most of that match. They lost cons or something.
Yep. Yeah.
So did anybody find anything surprising about Great Northern that they didn't expect? I mean, other than the finals were crazy, but just robots in general or something with their particular robot?
I thought just from watching it that I was just impressed how many different robots were scoring on the high, 3 or 4 pieces really. It seemed like there was more than in Duluth the week before, which makes sense. It's a week later, different set of teams, but it could have just been, I don't know.
Jake or Sam, were you on Lake Superior in Duluth or on Northern Lights?
We were Lake Superior, yep.
I feel like Northern Lights had quite a few that were scoring high, but I got the impression that Northern Lights, we were on Northern Lights. I feel like everybody was scoring, well, not everybody. Every match, there were people seemed to be scoring high in Northern Lights, but I got the impression that wasn't the case on the Lake Superior side. It's interesting how it just sort of works out that way.
It changed a lot as the event went. I mean, that tends to happen in the week 1 events, but it's like, you see the way these teams are playing at the end of quals on Saturday, and it's like if you were firing on all cylinders Friday morning, you'd be ranked way higher. And I feel like a lot of teams came into Great Northern like on that level, but maybe not.
Mm. Is anyone what regional is happening this next week? Is everybody? There aren't any local ones for week 3, right? No local ones. So pretty much everybody's got this Saturday. Well, we don't have the Saturday because our school is closed, so we can't even get into the school. But if you're lucky enough to be able to get into school, you've got a whole weekend to work on your robot.
Your school closed because you're on spring break?
Yeah. So the building is closed last weekend and this next weekend. This current weekend, I guess, yesterday. Yesterday and today, the school was closed. Building was closed. And then next Saturday and Sunday, the building is closed. We can get in there during the week, but we can't get in there on the weekends, which makes it hard for the mentors.
Usually it's just the the second weekend or spring break that it's closed, but for some reason last weekend it was as well.
My favorite moment from last weekend was in our qualifier 85 during autonomous. Another robot, 3293, drove across the field and then over our charge station and then backed up and balanced it. It was pretty crazy.
So did you get ranking points for that then?
We did get the points. Yeah, we had, I think, 40 penalty points. Our robot, I was afraid it was going to be in the way from us scoring a cone, and then it moved and balanced, and we scored, and then started to drive up there too and ran into it. And then, yeah, we did get the points from it. I think we still balanced 2 robots in the end. So had we balanced 1 in auto, we still would have got the rank point, but we did get the rank point.
Andrew, did you feel when you were at competition, I had a perspective not as because my team wasn't there. Did you feel that the game was that robots were a little more aggressive with each other than they were in Duluth? Because there was a lot more yellow cards dished out, I thought.
I don't know. I wasn't at Duluth and I didn't watch that one real close, but I guess none of our matches did we have that. I saw a couple yellow cards, but nothing in any of our matches.
I don't remember Northern Lights in Duluth. Maybe 1 yellow card. Nate, do you remember? It didn't seem like there was hardly any.
I didn't see a whole lot.
But I agree, Cheryl. I was sort of keeping an eye on the scoreboard, and every now and again you'd see this team's got a yellow, this team's got a yellow.
Yeah, one match, both sides got yellows. But what I also saw was a lot of the arms going over the outside perimeter, and refs were getting very upset because one ref got hit and they knocked the whole stand over. So the arms are pretty big and aggressive, and I saw a lot of that.
Yeah, I will say that I did not anticipate before competition season, when we learned out what the game is and we were going through our design concept, I didn't anticipate there'd be so many robots driving across the field with their arm extended. That was not something I was anticipating seeing. I just felt like everybody would be so afraid of having their arm ripped off and be retracted while they're driving across the field. But that did not appear to be the case. Well, this past weekend or in Duluth, there were a lot of teams driving across the field with their arms extended.
I know you kind of wonder if like the safe zones in this game are allowing that, or it's just a matter of time. Everyone's playing on borrowed time. That's to be determined, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. It could be that, it also could be that their starting configuration with their arm inside the robot doesn't allow them to hold the game piece, or if they go back down or back up or whatever it is, the game piece is more likely to fall out. So they avoid doing that. I'm not sure, but I really didn't anticipate people driving across the field with the game piece, 2 feet outside their robot. That was a little surprising to me.
I was surprised that more of those didn't get damaged at Northern Lights. But there was one in the playoffs. I don't remember which team it was, but it was on the ground and it got run over and shredded. I don't remember which team it was, but they had some fabric something, and it got down on the ground. Another team accidentally ran over it, and it was just destroyed.
Yeah, we had that. The arm came in and reached out and pulled out the pneumatics, and they were dragging their pneumatics around.
Yeah, one robot actually, arm got caught up in the pneumatic tanks and ripped them out of the robot, and they're dragging around pneumatic tanks.
And I can see now, after watching last week and now these last 2 weeks, as teams get a little bit more, I don't know, comfortable driving their robots, a little more assertive. I could
A lot faster.
I could see them get entangled because they're hitting each other pretty hard and getting connected and not being able to disconnect from each other.
Well, I feel like I'm seeing lots of robots that are like, for lack of a better word, like gangly. So like they drive and their arm is kind of floppy, and it's like, I mean, we saw kind of a floppy claw. Someone was trying to play defense on us, and this claw goes into our frame, and it's just like, pray the polycarb is in the right places and everything, and it was fine. But it's like, you get that kind of like, okay, I guess I know what we're doing before our next regionals, building a box around everything, because penalty or not, that can ruin you. So
Yeah.
And only one robot that I saw during inspection, it had no polycarb protecting them. And I did ask them, it's not required, but all their cords, like from top to, I mean, they had this beautiful set. Like, what do you think is going to happen when an arm gets in there? And they just don't even, they're like, well, I guess then we'll have to put polycarb. It's like, but an arm yanks all those wires out, you're toast. So it was interesting. I just see, if you're not completely covered, I just see a lot more damage in the next couple weeks.
Well,
is there anyone on the call from Stampede? Every now and again we get Stampede on here. They did some crazy yoga pose thing where they flipped over. They stopped too short and they completely rolled over. And then I think by the end of the competition, they just had duct taped up their arm. They weren't even going to use their arm.
Yeah, I think they were selected as the third alliance member to play defense, and I think the concern of having the robot extend out and get a penalty. I think that's my guess. My assumption is they taped it so that way there would be nothing outside of their frame perimeter ever.
Right.
We picked them, and they had removed their manipulator for their last match, and then it was kind of flopping around, and it hit their power switch and shut their robot off. They were playing defense and kind of pushing some cubes around, and they hit the wall, and their robot just disabled. Just like, I don't know, 35 seconds left in the match or something. But so then they duct taped it for finals. So that wouldn't happen again.
And they were a low goal scorer, and they actually did a pretty decent job. And so was Gators. You know, they didn't look like they used their arm mechanism much, and they just became a low grid zone tier, whatever that is, scoring robot, and did just fine. But I was hoping to get some more of the story behind that.
Is kind of the consensus that third robot just doing pure defense is probably not the move. I think that's kind of where we're at, is like third robot being able to score a little bit, place a little bit of hybrid, kind of seems to be the dream. But complete 3 offense is not, it's too congested. Somewhere in between, I don't know, maybe, I mean, if you have true world-class robots, maybe, but at least in the regionals we're going to at this point, I don't know.
I saw that real slick system, one of the matches that they all went in on one side of the switch, and then they'd scoot down and load from one end to the other. So they go all the way to the end, drop their cone or their block, and then out. So that alliance communicated really well, I thought, because it is crowded down there. But I agree that a defense-only robot we saw a lot of defense-only robots out there that didn't really make a difference because the swerves are too fast, and they can get around those defense bots in a big hurry. So the only thing it's doing is not putting points on your side of the board.
Slows them down a little, but not enough in most cases.
So they should be able to do something low grid or get blocks to the other side for you or something.
Yeah, it seems like if you want to play defense, you have to be swerve, and you got to be a really good driver, because I think the tank drive bots, just like you said, they're just not effective enough as a defensive bot.
Well, in auto too, I mean, it's having that third robot be able to place one high game piece in auto, and if you're really lucky, they do the auto balance for you, so your other 2 bots can do the fancy multi-piece autos. I mean, I think that's kind of the dream. Now, will we ever get to see that at our events? I'm not quite sure, but well, we were lucky enough to have that, and on Lake Superior anyway. But it was a huge advantage too. But
I was watching the Sydney, Australia event. I think it's 4613. The Barker Redbacks. It's a tiny little robot. It's auto. It starts on the wall side or the bump. I think it shoots the cube, and then it has 4 cubes placed out there. and I think it gets at least 3 of them. It just drives up and then it shoots them from up on the bridge over the charging station. Not necessarily scoring them, but its first task in auto and then in the start of teleop is to grab all the pieces that are out in the middle and just get them into their community. And then it comes back later on and straightens them out, or the teammates end up pushing them into the hybrid, or it takes them up, the ones that are in double and hybrid, and scores them up higher. But it's a crazy little robot that was really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I feel like if you could, like you said, dream auto, it'd be nice if you could have somebody who could score high, park, and balance. Another robot that could score high, go grab another game piece, and either score or at least get it back to the point where it could be scored. And then that third robot that can just get all the other game pieces inside your community so that at the start of the match, you can start trying to grab them away from your opponent or just start shuttling across the field. That's 3 pretty high caliber robots to do those things.
Right. I kind of feel like that third robot that's a defender, if they're going to, like if you're picking alliance selection, they're doing defense, but they should be grabbing any game piece that falls out, that's laying out there, get it into your community while trying to slow the other team down. But I think part of it is staying out of your teammates' way, and then also is slowing down / maybe grabbing pieces, or at least the hybrid.
Yeah, the tricky part is not just even this plugging up the scoring grid, but if your third robot isn't quick at acquiring pieces from the loading stations, that's also a big problem because you don't want your fast cyclers to have to wait to get a piece. It's a hard challenge. I don't know if that was sort of anticipated from the start, but it definitely is a challenge to figure out how to make that third robot work well in an alliance.
Do you think there's a benefit to that third robot just getting pieces from one side of the field to the other?
Cubes. I think if you have 2 robots that are good at getting cubes, then yes. But I don't really see that working very well for cones.
I've noticed a lot of jam ups in the loading stations. There'll be robots circling like vultures, waiting to get into the loading stations. Was one of the big. So if you had somebody that can move out of that loading station and just get the blocks over for the other robots to stack, I would think would be a big advantage.
Or people spending too much time in the loading station and their alliance partners are just stacking up because they're not getting out fast enough. So
It was definitely a bottleneck.
Would it be helpful for them the third one, to just be playing defense and stay away from your robots?
Well, you missed it, Eric, but we were just talking about that where we didn't feel like defense really did well. If you want to have a good defensive bot, my consensus is that you need to be swerve. You need to be a really good driver, because if you're not either of those two, then you're not. The defense just didn't seem to be very effective.
I'm just, I'm sorry. I could only attend now, but it seemed like often that third robot, if they could just be out of your way and maybe obstructing is better than being in your way.
Well, I think it's one of the challenges of playing defense in this game, is that if you're just kind of slowing stuff down in the middle, it can slow your alliance partners down just as much as the bigger mess is in that middle. It makes it harder for both teams, and I think it's hard to play that balancing act of, am I just creating a 5 robot pileup, or am I actually slowing down the other alliance?
Is there anyone on from No Mythic? I really want to know what No Mythic is going to do, whether they're going to keep their little grab the cube intake or put on their arm that they had built.
On their Open Alliance, it looks like there is an arm mounted on the robot now. Or part of it, one at least.
one of the things that I noticed, and I'm going to throw this out there, my kids that are young drivers are spending the next meeting they have. We're going to watch the 10 matches that they did in Duluth because they're young, so that they can see and kind of figure out and talk about what it's like when your alliance doesn't perform and how you can be flexible with that and work around it. Sam noticed right away, though, that everybody's putting cones out, but once the cones are tipped over, some of these bots can't get them. But yet I thought for sure we would see a change in GNR, that more blocks would go out. And it seemed like still people were setting up quite a bit of cones out there, and that the piece that was missing in many of the links were blocks.
Yep.
I thought.
Yep.
And the cones that they put out there, they're for robots that can only pick them up while they're standing.
There are a few that obviously can pick them up any direction, a couple intakes that can do that. But yeah, it seemed like a couple of them, if they're standing there, they can get them. But once they get knocked over, and then you get that robot that knocks all of them over, they're like, all right, ha ha ha.
I did see a strategy that I think it was in some of the final matches that one side turned the cones upside down and they were standing on the point.
Oh, yeah. That was the number one alliance. They
Right.
put two upside down.
So is that to keep
Andrew, did you see that? What was the point of that? Because they didn't grab them upside down like that.
Yeah, I think it was just to not let the other teams get them.
Huh.
Because, in previous matches, they went over to the other side and knocked theirs over.
Yep.
So I think they were playing against CIS, and CIS had stood a couple up, and they went over and knocked them over. So then they were like, well, we're going to put them upside down. So they're not upright. And they didn't want to just put them sideways. They wanted to be goofy about it, right? So
They were goofy. Yeah, I thought they were being like, it was interesting. And how long they went around those two cones. Like they stood for a while.
Yes. That's what's the interesting part. Nobody went for them.
I did see that strategy several times where right after auto, the robot was near the middle line, jumped across, knocked over any cones that were standing up. I expected that would happen in Duluth more than it. I actually don't think I ever saw that happen in Duluth. Maybe it happened and I just didn't notice it. But I saw that happen several times at Great Northern, where the first thing they did is drive across the line and knock over the cubes or the cones.
Yeah, we were amazed how many times. So I guess for those who didn't do their scouting or whatever, we can only get them standing up. And we were amazed at how many times people let us get away with that. It's like, really? We get these? Okay, cool. Like it was in the strategy that you knock them over, but we'll take it, But as time goes on, I'm sure there'll be less and less of that. And
yeah, I'm curious to see as things go on, the robots that are tall or tippy, if they're going to pull back and reevaluate and say, okay, we're too tall, we're too tippy, we're not fast enough. Let's take all this stuff off the top. Let's build something small, focus on scoring just in the bottom grid, and see if we can be faster and kind of that third robot option. Because, man, when you get to that line selection, you're looking for that third robot, somebody who's short and fast and can score low consistently. I mean, that's a perfect robot for your third option to add to your alliance.
Or if you're Gators, it could be your alliance captain, because that describes
well,
exactly what they were. Yep.
We were with No Mythic in Northern Lights, and they were amazing. And all they had was this: they didn't get their arm done, so they had this very basic piece of polycard that went around. It just would go around a cube, capture it, and they'd scream across the field at 1,000,000 miles an hour and fill up that entire bottom row. It was amazing.
That's what we try to do as well. We could shoot into the middle. We couldn't shoot into the top. We can now, I guess. When I'm told I was gone last week, but they were working on it while I was gone. But that's what we were doing. We were not as fast as No Mythic, but we were trying the same strategy. And we ended up, as Scott said, as you said, we got chosen as a third robot and ended up in the finals against you guys. But
yeah, Emperors, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys had a very similar robot, similar strategy too.
Yep. And that's why I'm very interested to watch more of the Great Northern. I only saw a few matches. I saw one of the finals matches. I watched one of the finals matches with the Gators, and I'm very curious to see how they were able to create an alliance with them just being a low goal scorer.
Yep.
That they were so successful, and then I knew they were in the finals. I was very surprised to find out that they won. So,
there's a lot to be said about getting those 3 links on the bottom. If you can get those 3 links on the bottom and just get 3 more game elements scored anywhere else in a row, I mean, that's a really hard ranking point to get. So I didn't anticipate that being such a great way to rank up until I saw that happen several times in week 1 and week 2.
But I also think like in the Gators example, they're also fortunate enough to get some, their other 2 picks were really good, high scoring. And, will that be available at all events or other events? It's hard to say. As the 7th Alliance captain, can you get 2 good, they got, I can't remember which teams it was, but was it Fred and another one? So I think in Midwest Regional, there was a low scoring, was it Crowbotics, I think, who ranked 1, and Wild Stang actually, I think, declined their request, ended up winning from the 2nd spot because I don't know, I'm not in their head, but I'm assuming they thought, hey, we need to do 2 high scoring for Robot 1 and 2. So we'll see, I guess. I guess my point is it's a good way to rank high, but that's like, can you win from that position if you rank 1 or 2 and you're,
I was just going to say that it's a great way to get ranking points so that you finish high, but does that make up for a recipe for a winning alliance in finals?
Even in watching some of these finals matches in California here, it seems like at the end, the top row would be filled, and then the hybrid row would be filled, and the middle was mostly left, not empty, but that was the one that didn't get completed. For whatever reason, I think they were just focusing on getting extra link points, maybe, and just being faster. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when we were doing our early strategy, Nate, I think we said that you fill the top row, you fill the bottom row, and the middle row is last. And we didn't actually end up doing that strategy in Duluth. But I feel like it is a smart strategy to leave that middle row. It's only worth 1 extra point, but it takes a fair bit more time to get elements in that middle row compared to the bottom row. Joseph, you're with No Mythic, right?
Yeah.
You have an arm on your robot now?
We do. We are, we're going with an arm for Minneapolis.
We were just discussing whether you're going to be a super fast, low-scoring robot or have an arm. Or maybe you'll be able to do both.
We do seem to be doing well in our driving. We're obviously still in the early process of testing with the arm, but I think that we have a really amazing drive team, and I think it seems like we'll be able to have a lot of the strengths that we did at Duluth, plus some additional strengths with the arm. I think obviously they'll be like a little bit, we probably won't be like as hypersonic fast as we were in Duluth, but I'm optimistic. I'm also not on builder programming, so I am not one to speak to that. So
is anyone planning to add more weight to their robot before their next competition?
Maybe we're not sure. We're at 74 pounds. We've already added a bunch, so we're not sure what to.
You've added a bunch, but you're still only at 74 pounds. Wow,
that's right. It was one of those like, I don't know, is this going to go horribly? And it didn't, but it still doesn't quite feel right. So we're not quite sure what to.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I ran into a few teams up in Duluth when I was asking about the robot, and maybe they were a little tippy or a little shaky, and they had said, well, we haven't added any weight yet. And I was surprised that they waited, or they had planned to but didn't, before their first regional. So it'll be interesting to see, now that we've seen these robots move around the field, how many people are going to go back and figure out how to get more weight on their robots.
Well, I know that 5464, even though we did add plenty of weight, I think we added about 40 pounds, and we weighed in at 113 with that 40 that we added. Also super unusual because we're the drill holes, go on a robot diet kind of team.
Mhm.
But so we had to send a picture of us adding the weight to all of our alum. So they're pretty surprised. But we did redistribute and make some changes to that due to the not so much stability wise, but our ability to climb on the charging station seemed to be affected by too much weight or too much ballast in the back. So we have a little less in the back now, still a significant amount, but then mid-bot, they added a little more, not on the front, but more, like a quarter of the way back. And it seems to work on our charging, and they slipperied up our charging station a little bit more. So we do have a drivetrain that is not ideal, but we did see a couple of them in GNR, but ours has air brakes. We have pistons that stop it. So, we can park on the station and then someone else can, level it out. But our brakes got bent in the first match. So we made some adjustments there as well. So that, yeah, but it was interesting where they decided or what worked best for the weight. So they didn't add any to the front, but we still have a significant amount of weight in the belly of the robot.
We had auto balancing code working great. It was 100% reliable, worked every single time. And then we put 30 pounds of steel on our belly pan, and then our balancing code didn't work anymore because it took so much more power to climb up the hill, and then you had momentum, and then you would slide as the thing tipped. And so balancing got a lot harder for us when we added weight because it took more power to climb up the hill, and then all of that weight dropping down, I think it was causing us to slide beyond the pivot point compared to when we were lighter. So yeah, it does. And it slows you down too a lot. More weight will slow you down. So I don't know. It's that weird trade-off. We did not anticipate, because we're always heavy too. Our robot's always heavy, and we've always driven fast with that heavy robot. And we saw some changes that we kind of didn't anticipate when we added that extra weight in our robot. I don't think it hurt us too bad. We had to make some adjustments, but it just wasn't expected.
And I think that is exactly what our team felt too. We had tried so many things and then wrote code with that. And the weight was one of the last things that was added, of course, and code is written prior to that. So I think we felt that same challenge. My coder she's going to have 3 weeks to work on the robot, which is pretty nice, despite fabrication's desire to take it completely apart.
I also noticed that a rock solid end game plan of how they were going to get onto the platform, who was going to make adjustments was crucial. I saw several alliances fighting each other, trying to level at the same time.
And I think panic must set in because I know my kids have that discussion, and I know other alliances do too. Like, where's the point that third bot that you're waiting for? You've got to have a number in your head because it's detrimental to not level it and just get that bot off of there and out of the way so that two can level that station. I saw a lot of that at GNR, and I was really surprised to see them fighting for getting those 3 level. Like, it was, instead of nixing that third one because they couldn't do it, including in the final matches.
I think that some teams need to figure out too is like, can you afford to do the 2 are up there and the third one comes in at the end, or are you heavy enough, especially that third one? Are they so heavy you all 3 have to go at the same time? I think that's where we're at on our weight thing is like, right now we're so light, we just kind of throw ourselves at it and it balances basically. But the trade-off is you get pushed. And so, harder to balance, but yeah.
One of the things that I noticed with GNR, I saw this a couple of times where they were working on balancing and they just didn't get it balanced, but they failed to put the drivetrain into brake mode, and all the robots just rolled right off of the charging station. So they didn't, and I think it was in the finals too, where they rolled the wrong way off the charging station. So had they rolled the other way, they'd have at least gotten the park points. But because they rolled into the center of the field, they got 0 points for their end game at all. And I don't know, it sort of seems obvious to me as a programmer, but I feel like you should have a button on your driver station saying, okay, I'm working on balancing, put my drive motors into brake mode right now, because you're not going to be screaming across the field when you're trying to park, right? So you can be in brake mode while you're trying to balance. And then if you don't get it, by the end of the game, at least your motors are in brake mode when teleop ends. hopefully teams that didn't anticipate that as a problem figure that out before their next competition. I know that I worked with the Ashby team. I was working with the Ashby team on, we put a button on their joystick, so I helped them do that so they could put their robot into brake mode. And that seemed to help them a lot with their end game.
I'm trying to understand why. I mean, I think everything on our robot any year is in brake mode besides if it's a flywheel.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Are we doing something wrong? We always run in brake mode. But I guess we velocity drive ours, but even before we did that, when we used the Andy Mark drivetrain, we ran in brake mode. And then when we would disable, we'd put it in coast mode so you could push it around. And this year we took that out because we don't want to slide off. But we always run in brake mode.
When I was working with the Ashby group, and again, it's only their second year, and maybe Jeremiah will pop in here. I haven't seen him come on yet, but he was saying that their drivers don't like driving in brake mode. And I don't know. I think that if you don't use the slew rate limiter to reduce your joystick input and you just go right to 0, I know that Emperors, you guys, I don't know if you're running a brake mode or not, but you guys basically flipped over in your front because you stopped too quick. And I don't know if that was because you're running in brake mode without a slew rate limiter or what the deal was with that. Do you know what happened there, Mark?
I think Ian could probably speak more intelligently about what happened there.
Yeah, I'm in a car right now, so sorry if there's a lot of background noise. But basically, we were like Andrew's team, and we kind of just set it to brake mode as a default because that's what we were used to. And because of that, what we didn't realize was that when a robot's going, really fast, the brake mode will basically make it so it's really tippy. But so we switched to coast mode for, once our first step, but then also we had to implement a slew rate limiter. And so those two things both seem to help, but it seems like, brake mode is an option to have in teleop, but if you're tipping, then it can cause problems.
I think autonomous is going to be benefit if you have it in brake mode too. I would think if you're running paths.
Yeah, and that's what I was also working with the Ashby team on that, where in teleop or in auto and net, we put the motors into brake mode, and then in teleop and net, we put them back into coast mode. And then they had a button on their joystick that they could click at any time when they were doing their balancing to put it back into brake mode. That seemed to work well for their drivers.
Yeah, and they were able to get some autonomous because I saw they were there late with another team member from 6045 working on the practice field on their robot and getting some autonomous going. So that was really fun to see.
Yeah, I sent Jeremiah a text message yesterday and I said, hey, congrats on the auto. That was really good. He spent an hour talking to our programming captain on Wednesday night about how to do auto balancing. I was really excited to see them get it figured out. Mm. Yeah, that's a big success. He told me that he has now 3 kids. He had 0 kids interested in programming until about 2 days before competition, before Duluth. And now he said he's got 3 kids that are already starting to go through some online coding programming because they want to learn to code. So that's good. I think that auto probably taught them the benefit of having programmers on the team instead of using, the cookie cutter stuff that Robot Builder gives you. Again, Robot Builder is awesome, but it's not going to give you the really advanced stuff that you need. So that was exciting. That I think his kids are fired up, even though they had a tough competition this past weekend. I think getting that auto working showed them that they could do some really awesome stuff.
I agree. Their belly laughs and just excitement on the practice field was almost, they were definitely space invaders in other people's space when they were working on autonomous, but they were just boisterous and excited. So it was really fun to see that even though their competition matches were not, where they wanted them to be, they were still having a great time on the practice field.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. I enjoy talking to Jeremiah and helping their new team and helping them through those those initial steps and problems is so much fun. Well, any other observations? I feel like we've kind of exhausted our topic for tonight. I was really hoping to have somebody have Ryan on. Ryan's usually here to tell us about how things went for Sabre with the crazy finals they had, or I don't know. Anyone else? I wasn't there, so if you were there and you got a story to tell, share it, please. All right. Well, what do we want to talk about next weekend, next Sunday? Anybody have a suggestion for a topic? I don't think there's going to be anything new for anybody since nobody's competing.
We had an interesting discussion on scouting last week. We might have exhausted the topic there, but I do think there's an interesting. I mean, I speaking for myself, I personally enjoy talking about scouting. There's lots of different ways to talk about how we engage scouts and what systems everyone uses, and I think.
Uh-oh. Joseph, I think you froze up on us. I would be happy to spend a lot of time brainstorming how to make scouting fun. We did a game, and I mentioned this last week. We did a game for KnightKrawler. It's the first time we ever did it, and we came up with it very last minute. In fact, I think it was when the dinners were out. The mentors were out for dinner the night before, and I made a Google form, and I said, pick the 24 teams. Pick the 24 teams that'll be in playoffs. And then whoever gets the most right wins a custom t-shirt and a case of Mountain Dew. And we had 4 students that got 20 out of 24 right. And the 4 students beat the next. We had 3 mentors who had 19. So the students beat the mentors, which was also very exciting.
So what's your cutoff for that? That sounds really fun. I have another scouting idea, but what's the cutoff that you have for them to turn that form in?
Oh, it was end of day 1. So
Awesome.
by end of day 1, and whatever lights out was in the hotel. So lights out, I think, was 10:30. So I set the cutoff for 10:30 Friday night, and then Saturday morning I dumped out all the results in a spreadsheet, and then I had to write a whole bunch of macros, which was not fun. I need to come up with a better way to score the sheet, but yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I would like to come up with ways that we can make other the kids are all excited about, we should do fantasy. I'm like, well, okay, but somebody's got to make that program work. And then how do you do fantasy robotics when you can't pick a team and then they're gone and nobody else can pick them, when you have every student on your team needs to be able to make a roster. But I think it'd be a lot of fun next week if we want to talk about ways to make scouting fun and the data that's important to collect. I mean, I'm all about talking about scouting. I'm a game developer anyway, so talking about how to make games out of things for robotics is always something I'm willing to talk about.
So I'm going to make a bingo game for my new scouters to encourage them to get bingo by checking the boxes off. I am snagging that idea from somebody else. Not that they used it for scouts, but we're going to definitely utilize it to get our scouts excited. My scouts worked really hard. They're very young, and they worked really hard in Duluth. Surprisingly, I thought for sure that they would peter out pretty quickly. Then it came to our attention that we could probably give them the rest of the day off on the next day, unfortunately. But I think if we get bingo out there for not just them, but for everybody, it'll get them all talking to all the teams, because they do pit scouting and obviously on the field. But I think we're going to put some things on that are pretty game specific, and they can maybe play that game, and at the end of the night, we'll be able to tally that up at the hotel. So that's one way we're going to get our young scouts to participate. But
one of the things that we've had some conversations in our Slack channel on the team lately is this new round robin, or the double elimination format in the playoffs. I'm not a fan. I know a lot of people are a fan, but I think it's really hard to beat the best alliance 2 out of 3. but it's easier for them to have an unlucky match where something breaks or they lose comms and they get knocked into a lower bracket. And then 2 or 3 matches later, something else goes wrong and then they get knocked out, where that's less likely to get knocked out of a regional when you have to be 2 out of 3 for something unlucky happening. And we talked about how it's super important to select alliance partners that don't have a history of losing comms or having a piece break or fall off the robot or something. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of pit scouting, is looking at the robot. Like you said, Cheryl, they don't have anything covered up with polycarb. Their wires are all exposed, and the chance of them getting snagged and getting knocked out in a match is higher. So that could be something interesting to make a game around of, nobody wants to guess if someone's going to get disabled or not. But if you put it around this context of reliability or consistency and try to do some type of a guess who's going to survive all their matches type thing, that could be something interesting too.
Or it might even be like designate one person to the team on your team to watch the robots that get damaged out on the field, because Sartell was able to get their robot fixed in less than 5 minutes every time they had to fix it. And the only exception to that was obviously their last match, right? And it seemed like it was still a break that was connected to the second match in that final 3, but they were fixed and up and running within 5 minutes every other time. And
they had a bunch of their robot apart over lunch on Friday, I think it was. Like, they were spread out in the aisle of the pit. So when it broke in that second match of the finals, we were like, or the first match of the finals, we were like, oh man. And they had that whole thing torn apart the day before. And then they were back out there and it was working for the first half of the match.
So I think the teams that do break, maybe not knock them out completely, because if you have a team that's a veteran team that can pit really well or has planned for that, we do drive break at our school. I think that, obviously if it's the match before, alliance selection, not great, but any other match, if they're up and running or if they go down twice and it's the same problem, or maybe everything mechanical breaks, so that's the downside. And some of the breaks are not their fault. People reach into your robot, and that's a real bummer.
You just never know. I like this. Let's do that. This could be a lot of fun next week. So let's do game design. Let's do scouting, game design, and maybe we'll come up with some projects that our programmers who don't have any work now can start working on some fun game programming and build some websites or some apps or something to make our next competition more fun. We have one of our mentors is a Unity programmer, and we've got several kids that are going to start building Unity games just to write more code. I think they're trying to build like an adventure type game, but I like the idea of building apps over the summer, websites over the summer that do fun game stuff. So maybe we can come up with some game design ideas that we can put some kids to work on.
It's also, if people
go ahead.
If people are still interested in the game analysis aspect of robotics, I'm looking over the scouting data that I've seen from both Northern Lights and Great Northern, and there's lots of really interesting takeaways that you can take away from the scouting data that you've collected. So it's an interesting approach.
Yeah, even the data analysis part. What would be cool to chart? What would be cool to graph? How do we pull interesting analytics out? I think this sounds like a good topic. Let's do that.
Yeah.
All right.
It also might be interesting to maybe talk about, I don't know how much other robots from other regional people would be interested in talking about, because I know there's been a lot of interesting things. Like I think it was 4414 got straight 4 ranking point average at the Ventura County Regional, which is, I guess there's maybe some other things interesting in that.
All right, let's make it about stats, scouting, and making the games. Sounds like a good topic. Hopefully we can get some more people even to show up a fun topic like that. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining. It was kind of a short one tonight, but happy to be done a little early since I'm suffering with this cold. Hopefully nobody else came back from regional sick or with COVID or any of that business. So, alrighty. Well, I will see you all next week.
See you later.